Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this brand new episode of the Tech Your Business podcast. Today on the show, we have another guest. Our guest today is Blake Burch. Blake is the founder of Shipyard, and Shipyard is a company which helps you connect your data. So he's going to explain what that means, what they do, and also tell us a few things about taking his business. So welcome to the show, Blake.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, so tell us a bit about yourself and Shipyard, what you do.
Yeah, so Shipyard is a low-code data orchestration platform. What that means is that we help people connect the different tools that they're using in their business, help them move data between those tools, and ultimately help them automate and monitor and even get notifications when something goes wrong. Because ultimately, when it comes to using data in your business, it's important to make sure that you're getting it continuously, that the data looks the same every single day, that there's no issues with what a lot of people just call data pipelines that are happening in the back end. And that's what we help a lot of folks with. Before Shipyard, I was actually leading data teams at a digital advertising agency. A lot of my work in the past has revolved around figuring out how you can use data for more than just dashboards, how you can potentially use it to automate internal processes for a business, how you can figure out how to um, make sure that you are making that data actually purposeful for like marketing or for finance or for any other department that exists within the business. And so a lot of that you'll see today within Shipyard itself. We help a lot of people automate any sort of work that they can do with their data in Shipyard.
So when you say low code, what does that mean?
Yeah, so there's a lot of hot debate in this space about what exactly is no code versus low code versus, I guess, high code. That would make the most sense. From my perspective, the difference is that no code means you're never going to have to you're never going to have to write any sort of code. The entire experience is going to be drag and drop. Low code is like a middle ground. It's where you should be able to drag and drop, but you're not restricted from writing code if you want to. So in our case, we build out a lot of different templates in the space where you can download data, upload data, send messages, various different actions like that out of the box. So you can do that with your databases. You can do that with different cloud storage tools, with things like Google Drive and Box. But if you inevitably can't do something that you want to on our tool, you are able to write your own Python scripts, your own Bash scripts, your own Node scripts, and orchestrate that all together with our low code templates at the same time. And so the reason why we say that it's low code is because even if you're dealing with databases, you're still going to have to write some sort of SQL query in order to get that data out. Technically, that is a code a snippet or something like
Yeah.
that. And so that's how it ends up being low code, not quite no code with individual like buttons that you could press to analyze your data or anything else like that.
So you have a non-technical, no coding, previous coding experience, like you said.
Mhm.
So what inspired you to start a technical data company?
Yeah, I was not technical myself. Initially, when I started, I taught myself Python. I taught myself
Wow.
SQL along the way. And part of the reason for that was I got really annoyed having to do a lot of work in Excel every single day. And I'm like, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a way for
Hmm.
me to grab this data automatically without pressing a like download button every single day. There's got to be a way to automatically filter this data. And then initially, I was having to take those Excel sheets and like upload them into another tool. And I was like, there's got to be a way for me to do it without clicking the upload button. And so I gradually taught myself those tools over time. And it's funny now at this point, I feel like I have to consider myself a developer of some sort because I can write scripts and get stuff done. I still don't feel like a developer. And at the end of the day, like I just want a tool that gets the job done quickly. Um,
Hmm.
but still gives me the flexibility that I need along the way to accomplish whatever task I kind of have in my mind. So my big initiative for like how we built Shipyard to allow like your code plus low code to live in harmony really came out of some of those ideas where I've used tools like Zapier in the past, and they're great tools. They allow you to do things like if this then that for different SaaS tools that you might use. So if there's a new row added to a spreadsheet, then update some other sort of tool. But the problem that I always had with them was that they inevitably couldn't do exactly what I wanted them to do. And then I was stuck writing my own script and having that live in a separate platform. And now I had two platforms to keep up with. So part of building out Shipyard was trying to figure out how can you sort of meet that demand, making something just super easy to use, but ultimately if I have to get into the weeds and I have to build something custom because I had some idea that isn't possible with stuff that's out of the box, that I would be capable of building that. And so that's ultimately like where the idea of having a technical product like Shipyard be still available for less technical folks came.
So how did you go about learning those skills, learning the Python and those other things?
I wish I had a great answer for this, but I think the real answer is that I had a goal in mind. And I think a lot of people get trapped in the mindset of, oh, I need to learn Python. What's the right course for me? And like, what's the right
Hmm.
pathway? Like, what are all the steps and things that I need to learn? You know what? I don't have an answer for that. All I know is that I had something I wanted to solve. And because of that, I was able to dive in and figure out questions along the way. Sort of like I broke it down for you earlier. It was the question of, how do I grab this data every single day? Okay, that's done. How do I filter
Hmm.
it every single day? And because of that, I started learning these skills over time. Now, I know how I started. I don't even know if this book exists anymore. It's like Learn Python the Hard Way. Um, I think I use something like SQL Zoo online, but those might be dated sources now. And really, the best suggestion I have is just have a problem that you're trying to solve and break it apart step by step and use that as a way to kind of jumpstart yourself. And even today, I would maybe even ask ChatGPT to help you along the way, just because it will give you the information, the code that you might need to write, and give you a good starting point, and you can break it down from there and figure out how it works.
So what kind of tactics did you use early on to attract those first customers to Shipyard?
So our first customers for Shipyard came completely organically, inbound. And that has been one of the biggest drivers for us being able to continue to grow the business. We build out a lot of pages around basic solutions that you can accomplish that move data from tool A to tool B. And so things like download your data from Snowflake and upload it to Google Sheets, or upload it to S3, or upload it to Google Drive, and like every iteration that you can imagine for that. And those are pages that we have built out. We've built a lot of YouTube videos and stuff for that. And ultimately that brings people into the platform and they find value out of it and convert to customers. But that first customer was totally organic, found us for one of those
Hmm.
reasons. It was a consultant for I'd say a medium-sized business that has a few hundred locations in the
Well,
in the US. But it was just about being able to provide that sort of value and being able to solve the exact problem that they had in that moment.
so you mentioned using YouTube to drive your making YouTube videos and customers finding you through those YouTube videos.
Mhm.
If a business wants to implement that, what should they look out for? Because at the end of the day, a lot of businesses try doing this and it doesn't work for them.
Yeah. What we found to be the most successful on YouTube is what I mentioned about those solution videos. They are very intentional. They're
Hmm.
relatively technical because they're bottom of the funnel. Someone wants to do exactly this one thing, and we're helping guide them through the process. They're 5-minute videos that show on our platform how to accomplish the exact thing that they were searching for. And as a result, that's something that is more successful in terms of having very high intent and getting people onto the platform. Not every video has good views. To be frank, the highest videos that we are performing videos that we have right now are all about being able to use OpenAI Whisper to transcribe your videos on YouTube. Those have thousands of views, and then we have others that only have tens of views. So
Wow.
it's a little bit of a numbers game, right? You don't know what is going to resonate in the space, what is going to be picked up by the YouTube algorithm. We didn't do anything differently for that video. It just happened to reach people in an area about something that they were searching for, that there was less content available on. And so I think, like, on that note, the thing that matters the most for a business that's trying to do stuff with YouTube is maybe don't give up too early and make sure that you're trying various different formats. Because also, another great example that we experimented with early on is there's an open source package for transforming your data called DBT. It stands for Data Build Tool. It's really widely used in the space, and we decided that we wanted to make a guide for how people could run DBT on our platform, because you're fully able to do that and automate it and get alerts and all of that good stuff. And this was a long form content piece. We're talking about like 3 to 4 20-minute long videos where we were helping people figure out how they could run DBT with all the major databases like Redshift and Snowflake and BigQuery. And they did not perform at all initially. And we're like, man, we spent all this time trying to get this out here. It's good, high quality content, but it just didn't end up resonating. Months later, all of a sudden that starts picking up, right? So we had blog posts and guides associated with it, and now we're ranking for like getting started with DBT and Snowflake on SEO. You can see our videos popping up there. Like anytime someone is searching about that stuff on YouTube itself, we end up popping up. And so those are some of our strongest performing videos right now. But again, we didn't know that until about 3 months down the road. It took a while for that stuff to start to really resonate. So I would just say experiment, try different formats, figure out what can or can't work, but don't give up too early. Just have the consistency to try multiple new things and go after what you see that's working for your business.
Interesting. So from your initial description, you said you built Shipyard basically to solve a problem you were having, that's connecting your data points and all that. But at what point did you realize that this product you were building would be useful to a lot of other people?
So, and one thing that I didn't mention fully about the origin story was that our product was actually spun off from the advertising agency that I worked at previously. It was technology that we were using in-house to build out these automated solutions for some of these like Fortune 1000 brands. And so we really knew initially that this was going to be the right technology to be able to accomplish these sort of tasks. We had already dog food it in-house. We knew that this was going to work, but we kind of came to a realization that as we were talking to multiple different brands, that other companies didn't quite have an easy way to be able to move and manipulate this data in their own they didn't have these resources on their own in their own company. And so we realized that we were doing all this stuff for marketing, but there was a larger opportunity to be able to cater directly to the data team, because most of these data teams didn't have a way to move, manipulate, and automate the data on their side. But the data work, as far as we could tell, was ubiquitous. It didn't matter what industry you were in. It didn't matter which department you were grabbing data for. Everyone kind of went through the same exact processes of extracting that data, loading it into the warehouse, transforming it to make sure it looks good, getting it into dashboards. And our goal was to help with that first process and then also help people be able to react and use it more frequently.
Interesting. Interesting. Right. So, you talked earlier about making videos on OpenAI and things like that. So, what are your thoughts on AI and data and what you do?
I think AI is still in its infancy, right? We don't know what it's going to look like 5 years from now, but I think that we're on the cusp of figuring out like more and more opportunities of what it can be used for, especially when we're talking about like generative AI. So when it comes to the data space specifically, I think one bandwagon that a lot of people have jumped on and realized could be a great opportunity is the ability to write SQL statements automatically. There'll be some people that say that it's not very good at doing that and that it doesn't always have the right context. And that's going to be the case with anything. But if you provide, like, here is the schema of my database, here are the columns that exist, here is the definition of those columns, and then you say, I want a SQL query written in this like particular flavor because it lives in this database, and I want it to answer this question, it's going to write you something that is decent. And I think the thing that a lot of people have like misconceptions about for AI is that they expect it to be perfect. And that's really not the case. It's never going to get something first try. It is an iterative process that you have to keep on saying, oh, well, I ran this and that doesn't quite do what I wanted it to do. Can you please like add something for this, or can you take that away? And like, oh, I'm sorry. And then it'll come back with a better end result. I think that iterative process is something that has to continuously be in place. And so beyond things like being able to write SQL automatically, I think there's opportunity for stuff like if you're trying to get data from a very particular source and you don't know exactly where to start, going to a AI service to like get the baseline code for how should I download this data from this service. If you don't want to have to build it out from scratch because the training data is it ends from 2021, heck, just grab the source code from the documentation that you're trying to integrate with, copy all of that in, paste it in, and then just say, hey, based on this documentation, what do I need to do to download the data or accomplish this specific task? And so I see that becoming more and more prevalent, and something that even our integration team on our side actively does to help out with the development process of creating those new low-code templates that we have on our side.
So, call before the recording, we're talking about this code interpreter, and probably maybe you can just share with us the possibilities with it and what it can do.
Sure. So the ChatGPT code interpreter I find to be really fascinating because I talk about like working with generative AI being more of an iterative process. ChatGPT's code interpreter builds in the iterative process like automatically. And so this is a relatively new feature that they just released. It's only available to people that are subscribed to the Plus plan. But effectively, you are able to upload a file and then provide the requirements of what you want to be done to that file. So like a good example that we had with one of our customers that we helped them with is that they were able to export a CSV of data from Tableau. It wasn't in the format that they wanted it to be in, and they wanted it to look exactly a specific way because that's what their client wanted. So we upload the CSV file with sample data only because we don't want any sort of like data leaking to OpenAI. We then like said, hey, we want this file to be pivoted based on this specific row. The current column names, here's what we want them named instead. And actually, we want them to be in this particular order. And so by providing those requirements, it starts going through a process where it writes some code and then changes something, and then writes some more code and then changes something. And eventually it spits out a file and says, hey, is this what you wanted? So you download the file, you look at it, and probably the answer is, no, actually, you're doing something wrong. I need it to do this instead. And then it says, oh, I'm sorry. And then it goes through the process of writing code again. And the interesting part is I say that it's writing code, but it's all doing that under the hood. The way that they display it right now is that they say it's a little button that says show work. So you can see what's running under the hood, but you don't have to. And I think that is really powerful, where business users have the potential to manipulate files and do things that they weren't able to previously, because the business user is going to know, hey, this is exactly what I want to accomplish, and this is the file that I already have on hand, and all you have to do is download the file that it spits back out and say, hey, this doesn't look like I expected, and then provide the right requirements along the way. But that's just one example of what we've used the code interpreter for on our side. But I see this as kind of being like the next evolution of what I'm calling AI ops. I feel like the future of development work is going to be taking those tasks, breaking them into chunks, and then saying, hey, for every single chunk, what is the requirement and the thing that I'm trying to accomplish, and then having it go through some sort of tool like code interpreter to where it makes that like chunk of code to do the very specific job. And then you're able to plug and play all those different chunks of code from your entire problem set together. And so it's like this iterative process of, rather than coding it yourself, you're just providing, here is the input, here's the expectations, and verifying that it gives the right output. And then the next chunk should take that output as its input, and so on and so forth, until you have a working script across the board. And so I'm pretty bullish on this idea, and it's something that we are trying to figure out in Shipyard, how to make it super easy to deploy any of the code that's actually being written by ChatGPT and automate it every single day. Because code interpreter is static. It does the job one time, but it's not going to do it every single time. And it's how do you make sure that that is actually assisting you with your automated workflows?
You know, when you just mentioned it's static, I think that brings me to my next question, because when you look at these possibilities with AI, you look at the possibilities with the code interpreter, all the other things that are coming up, and like you said, it's still in its infancy. Don't you see AI as a competitor to your service, to a lot of other services coming out? What are the disadvantages of probably a prospect or something depending on AI compared to an existing service?
I think AI is going to need a lot of specialization in order to make sure that it is accurate. Because of the fact that I mentioned earlier, people just expect it to be right the first time. It can't be right about everything the first time. Like, you have to have some sort of domain knowledge to be able to make sure that it is right most of the time. And so, like what I was mentioning for code interpreter, I don't expect you to be able to give it a giant problem and have it write the code that does the entire thing end to end. I do expect it to write each individual chunk that you can then string together, but you can't string it together with the AI tool. You can't deploy it with the AI tool. I'm not worried about that aspect. I'm trying to figure out, how do I facilitate this work that's going to be done with AI and make it super easy for people to get it up and running in the cloud on a daily basis? But like a good example of the accuracy that I'm talking about is, we actually experimented with AI for a little bit, building out a feature called words to workflows. Our idea was that you could describe the workflow that you wanted to create, and it would build out all of the different tasks that needed to live on our platform, and it would even fill in a few details. So if you said, I need to grab data from Google Sheets and send it via email every single day at 7 a.m. Very basic example, but it would go through and build step 1, download the data from Google Sheets. Step 2, send the data to email, and then it would automatically set the schedules. But the issue that we saw was you had 2 steps. It was great. You had 4, 5, 6 steps. All of a sudden, like, it would sometimes get the order wrong. It would like, we allow people to like have a branch that happens when things are successful, or a branch that happens when things are errored. It would get those sort of like statuses and things wrong. And so that was like one issue that you could have with it. But another issue we had is that if we didn't have the low code template, we had to have it write the code. Well, sometimes it was like, well, this thing that you wanted to accomplish, it doesn't match up to any template. It needs to be written in code, even though that wasn't true. And so now you're writing like a little bit of Python code that didn't need to be there, and it's just adding extra complexity. And so what we found from that, and we kept it in kind of like an alpha stage for a while. We never fully publicly released it, is that it's really hard to make these things be super accurate all the time. And especially if you embed them into a product, like, people expect it to always do what they want it to do. And when it doesn't, they won't rely on it. They won't trust it. And that's where we kind of came into the idea of, rather than trying to build the whole thing in one, what can we do to facilitate building it chunk by chunk along the way? Because then you can verify as the end user, yes, this does what I expected it to do. It matches, or it is 100% accurate. And then you move on to the next step and make sure that's 100% accurate. So hopefully that answers your question about like feeling competitive pressure or not.
Yeah, it still has a long way to go.
Definitely does.
So you from your description earlier and how you started Shipyard, it appears you love automation. So within your business, apart from the connecting data points and all that, how have you focused on automating your internal workflows and processes as you grow the business?
Absolutely. So one of the biggest ways that we've been doing that on our side is through kind of an interconnected content management system. So we ended up choosing to use Sanity towards the beginning of this year. It's a little bit more of a technical content management system, but effectively we wanted to build out a way for our integrations team, as they built more templates, how could they make those templates automatically turn into our documentation, automatically turn into a new page on the website, automatically update the template in the application itself. And so that's an area that it took us a while, maybe like 6 months or so, to get where we are now, to where effectively those engineers can push their code and it will automatically update each of those locations at the same time. And a lot of it is manual stuff that we've written. You manually have to update the image. You manually have to like provide the name of what the template is going to be. But there's some stuff that's automated too, like the description. If I know what vendor it's for, what the action is, I can provide that to an AI service and have it write a little bit of description fluff that can then be used for some of the other services. I can't use AI, for example, for like authorization, because that has to be 100% right. And I have to make sure that someone can go step by step and not have any errors along the way. But it's fine if the thing doesn't have to be completely right. So we are building that out, and our goal is to continue trying to iterate on that. Like, some ideas that we have is we're using those YouTube videos, right? We're currently trying to build out our solution pages automatically so that we can combine every possible A to B template and make sure that there's a page for it. But we'd like to be able to do the same thing for the videos. Is there any way to dynamically make and record videos or guides for each of those different solutions that people can build, so that someone can see a tangible example for 10,000 solutions. Like, that would be unfathomable to make individually, but is something that we're kind of scoping on automating there. I would also say that we're using AI for automating workflows for things like our YouTube videos themselves. So we built out a process on our side that will take a look at the videos that we have in our channel. And if they don't have a transcription, it will automatically take that video, throw it through a transcription process like Whisper. It will then upload the transcript back into YouTube to make sure that it is highly accurate there. But then we can also have that transcript turned into like a miniature blog post that kind of like summarizes what is happening, because the transcript is just text that we can then summarize, and then we can have that published as a blog. That entire process isn't fully automated right now, but it is something that we're trying to streamline and make sure that there's less human in the loop systems and that we can have working continuously. But our team has actually been really good about finding use cases for AI, and part of that is that at the beginning of this year, one of the initiatives that I laid out for the team is like, I want every initiative we do to start with AI. And so just emphasizing that all the time, start with AI. So if we get people in the mindset of figuring out, okay, I'm having this issue, what if I just run to ChatGPT with it? What if I use like GitHub Copilot for this? And it doesn't always work, but it changes how you think about trying to do internal processes to a point that you are able to be more effective and more efficient and find new uses for this technology. So I think that's been like a huge win for us, and means that we have a lot more ways that we can keep on automating our business internally.
All right. So for non-technical founders like yourself before, who have these ideas of products they want to build or things they want to implement, where would you advise they start?
Especially if you're low, if you are non-technical, there is a lot of like no code, low code software out there that you can use to initially build out your business ideas. We personally use Webflow for a lot of our web design stuff. I know there are tools out there that you can build a website just using like Airtable as a database for those sort of things. You can use tools like Zapier to be able to easily connect like a survey tool to a email tool to your like website forms and things like that. I don't have any like particular resources off the top of my head, but I know there are various like boot camps and like just services online that will showcase all the different no code tools that exist out there for you to be able to just test out a business idea and get something that is functional without necessarily having to have all of the technical skills along the way. I will also say that I would warn against building out any sort of business that is just like a wrapper on top of something like OpenAI's API. I see a lot of those popping up, and a lot of them feel like features that are masquerading as a tool. And if you're just building out something that does like one very specific thing that could be replicated in another AI service if you provide it with the right prompt, I don't feel like that's super sustainable. I try to make sure that you're thinking through like a deeper problem that could be solved there, and relying on some of these APIs for AI can be dangerous too, because they're constantly changing the model. And all of a sudden, if the model changes and it doesn't quite do what you expected it to do, well, you're going to end up with a product that isn't quite living up to the expectations that you might have set earlier on. So, those would be my recommendations, especially if you're trying to do something in the AI space, and also if you're someone that's a little bit less technical.
All right. So what would you, going over time, looking back to where you started and where you are now, What advice would you give your younger self? What would you do differently to get to where you are faster?
I would have done far more research from the outset about product-led growth strategies. It's something where I feel like I stumbled along a little bit initially. I knew the basics. I knew like why you might have like a freemium product, and what the goal was, trying to create like a little bit of friction to get people to ultimately end up converting. But I feel like doing a like stronger education for whatever your go-to-market strategy is, making sure that you know all the ins and outs of what people typically do in that situation is going to give you a lot of ideas that you can move forward with, and if something isn't working, be able to quickly iterate on. I would say that the secondary part of that is tracking more event data earlier on. So, and they do kind of go together. We are a SaaS platform. And so it wasn't until this year that we had a strong level of event data so that we could verify every button that people were clicking on in the application and like what button they had clicked before that and all that good stuff. We had high level analytics and we had the ability to watch how our users were using the platform, but we had no way to be able to say, hey, this is the number of people that are using this feature. This is the number of people that are getting stuck in this sort of pipeline. And what that meant is that our engineers couldn't like directly attribute changes that they made to actually improving the flow or reducing the time that it took to take a specific action. So I would go back and critically assess what are the things that I want to track and measure along the way, and how do I make sure that I have all that data up front to make sure that I can successfully iterate on the strategy, in this case, the product-led growth strategy that I wanted to achieve.
Nice. So is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners? Probably a question I didn't ask or something that you feel would be really of value for them to know?
I think the biggest thing for this conversation is, again, going back to the idea of AI ops or using like ChatGPT code interpreter. If you're not using these tools and you're not starting problems or trying to solve problems with these tools, I think you're going to fall behind. I don't believe AI is going to replace us. I think people that use AI well are going to replace people that don't know how to use AI tools. And so like really try and push your boundaries on these. Like my whole thing has been for the past 3, maybe 4 weeks now, since Code Interpreter came out, I'm not writing code. I'm only trying to solve problems in Code Interpreter because it forces me to figure out the ins and outs, how this really works, what it could be used for in the future, and ultimately makes me a faster problem solver. So that would be my biggest takeaway for people. If you're not doing this stuff, just try it out. Just try and incorporate it into your process, solve problems quickly, and figure out the ins and outs.
Nice. So how can listeners reach you in case they want to learn more about you or they want to work with you or anything else?
You can find me on LinkedIn. It's just Blake Burch, and you should be able to find me there. I'm also on Twitter, although less active, at Blake Burch _. And outside of that, our team over at Shipyard, we put together a weekly newsletter called All Hands on Data, where you can get the best articles that we found in the kind of data and AI space every single week. It's a great read and something that we do to make sure that we can stay up to date with the space. And so we're just trying to give back and help others find that as well.
So thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing with us on sharing Shipyard with us, sharing your workflows, your automation, your story, and everything today. And for the list,
absolutely, it's great getting to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And for the listeners, thank you for being with us on this episode of the Tech Your Business podcast. And I hope you've picked one or two things from this episode. And don't forget, like he said, implement AI in your workflows, because like he said again, AI is not going to replace you, but people using AI are going to replace you. So don't be left behind. So till next week, when we come with another episode of the Tech Your Business podcast, don't forget, how can you use AI this week? And don't forget to keep taking your business. Bye for now.